I actually had to go back and watch my last layout update before filming this video because there was so much, or I couldn't remember what I've done since the last layout update, but here we are. I got to I had to refresh my memory on where I was and tracking the progress, but the biggest thing that I've done since the last layout update has been the addition of sculpt mold around the whole layout. So at this point, all of the terrain, the basic terrain scenery, is complete. So it looks really good. I think last time I just had lattice here. So you can see here, this is no longer latticed up. I got the plaster cloth as well as a sculpt mold over it. Over in this corner here, I fixed this up from last time where I talked about how the terrain was all messed up, and I got that fixed. I have this little hill over here, and I have everything over this area by the overpass, as well as a new foundation for BM Tower. So that's the biggest thing that has been upgraded, or has been updated to the layout, with the addition, of course, of 2 more bags of sculpt mold. You know, it's kind of funny, as I was thinking about it, the benchwork and the layout really didn't cost much. I think it was like $70 for all of the wood on the layout. And I saved a lot of money on plywood because the whole layout doesn't really have much plywood, like decking. I have it here and I have it like over there initially, as well as a little corner here. So in total on wood is probably at most is under $100 for the entire benchwork. But the irony in that is that I spent probably an additional $100, if not more, on plaster cloth, several rolls of plaster cloth, and the whole layout here took 3 bags of sculpt mold. And admittedly, there are probably a few areas where it would benefit to have like another little layer. Trying to think of I think over here is a big culprit. You can kind of see the lines of the cardboard lattice. I don't really like to see the lines at all, but it's not worth me spending another $22 on a bag of sculpt mold to cover up such a minor thing. And I think once I have the dirt down to the ground cover, and you won't even notice it, so I'm gonna let it go. But yeah, I spent a lot of money on scenery supplies. But after I finish all the sculpt mold, the next thing I've been doing, and I was actually doing it prior to filming this layout update, was painting everything. And I'm using a color, it's like a dirt colored paint that I could find. I bought it at Lowe's. It's called Changing Seasons. And I actually bought it in these little color sample cans. These cost about $3 from Lowe's. You can pick any color you want and give it to the person at the paint booth, and they mix it up. And a jar, you see it's about, I don't know how many, what does it say? 7.5 fluid ounces. So it's about the size of my hand. These cost $3. Now, admittedly, you don't get a lot of paint out of them, but it's $3 a can. So I think it's nice because it allows you to buy as you go, you know, versus compared to spending however much money a gallon of paint or something would cost. You can kind of buy what you need. And I've just been painting I've been going 1 jar at a time, you know, painting when I need, and then when I run out to Lowe's, spending another $3 and buying another jar. So far I've used 2 jars. I've used this one, and I have another one over my workbench. So I've used 2 jars so far, and you can see 2 has got me pretty far. I did, you know, all of this with 2 jars. You know, so I see I have a pretty good amount here. You know, $6 total, so I think it's a pretty good deal. And I'm actually done painting right now because I ran out of paint in my second jar that I have, so I'll need to go to Lowe's tomorrow, or next chance I get, to buy another jar, and then I'll be up to, what, $9 in paint, which is fine. But my plan here is to paint all of the sculpt mold, the terrain landforms that I did, as well as the plywood, at least the 2 big sheets of plywood. The only areas I'm probably not going to paint are going to be anywhere to be water. So I have 2 plywood sheets where I don't have water. This is going to be the Black River, obviously. And then over here, where I plan to have little lake scene, modeling Lake Erie, I'm not going to paint up the dirt colored paint. It's going to get painted over a different color anyway when I eventually do the water. But everything else here I do intend to paint. So that's coming along. And like I said, before I was filming the layout update video, this video I just painted some areas over here. It's a pretty good dirt color paint. I bought another paint before. You can see it in some other videos that I posted earlier. It was a much darker brown. It was closer to the color of these Pensy coal hoppers, and be a little bit darker than that. And not only was it the wrong color, but it was oil-based paint, so it smelled terrible. It really didn't come out of anything. Now, granted, I didn't get it on the floor or on my clothes or anything, but you know, it just kind of had that added risk, if you want to say. This is all latex water-based paint, so this will come out no problem if I were to get it on myself. But I try and paint pretty, you know, I try and take care in paint and keeping it where it's not supposed to be. So it's worked out pretty well, but it's just between the color and the durability of it, it's a much better paint to use. So I think it's a pretty good color. And when I do the dirt over it, I think it'll be a good base for the ground cover I want to use. Moving over, I think what else I've done here. Other new things here. This is on the bridge. The bridge has gotten quite a lot of improvements. So I'll start over here with the bridge piers. My last video, I don't even think I had it placed in anything. It was just temporarily sitting on some stacked foam. But since then, I have some new bridge piers. These are 3D printed by my brother. They are pretty close replicas to the real bridge piers that are over on the bridge in Lorain, Ohio, which is what this bridge is based off of. But they're pretty close. The biggest difference in these piers between the model and the prototype is on the prototype there are two girder approach spans. Neither are very long, but the lift bridge is centered in between two approach spans. So the piers are actually you know, freestanding. They're not attached, and they don't go into the ground like I have in the model here. I didn't have the room to have the approach span, so you see here mine just comes right off, you know, right down to the bank, right from the land, straight to the bridge, the lift bridge, without any kind of approach span. So the backside of these piers I had to kind of cover up with the landforms, which I think is fine, and I think it looks good. But that is the biggest difference between, you know, the model and the prototype. Aside from that, the piers are pretty dead on. I did paint them I think it was Krylon, the camouflage color. I saw that in Norm Charbonneau video. One of Norm's videos, he talked about using the khaki color for concrete. I think it's a pretty good base color. It does need weather, and I do plan on weathering it. It looks a little unnatural now, but it's definitely better than just the white that these were when they were initially 3D printed, so they look good. Moving up, you'll see on the bridge here, it's gotten quite a bit of improvements, and I'm actually really, really happy with how it looks now. This was, well, I'd always planned to do something like this to this bridge, but I kind of did it earlier than I anticipated, because when I put the sculpting mold on over here, I couldn't paint it right away because sculpting mold takes like several days to dry, and I really didn't have much else to do, and I want to get layout work done, so I decided to tackle the bridge project. So the biggest thing that I did here was I removed like the bracing in between the two towers. So it had like two, and kind of the holes are still here. It had one here, that was just like bracing on the outer side. Then in the middle had a third like metal pole that went across, and that was actually the drive shaft for the lowering and raising mechanism. You see the center gear here. It attached to that center gear and then ran across to the other end. I went ahead and removed not only the center bracing, but also the drive shaft. Now I understand this does remove the lift feature of the bridge, and that may bother some people. But for starters, when I purchased this bridge, I was at the understanding that didn't work, and I actually prefer that it didn't work for that reason, so I was gonna modify it. But to my knowledge, this bridge never worked in the first place. I never tested it, but I was told it didn't work, and the price I got it for reflected that, so I wasn't, you know, it didn't work. So if it didn't work, I guess I really didn't lose anything. But you know, I guess if you're like a collector, you buy, you know, you're not really big into modifying stuff, then this is probably not something that you would really do. But for me, this is the only commercially available lift bridge in O scale, and I like to have myself look a little more realistic and less accessory-like. So I think with that stuff gone, it really enhanced the look of the bridge. Just that. But I, of course, did more than that. So you see over here, these are also 3D printed. They're like these like little support things, I guess. I don't really know how else to describe them, but they're the little like bracing. There's one on each side, and in between them, I spanned some metal wire in between. This is all based off prototype pictures. Honestly, I don't know what a lot of this stuff is. I'm going to assume it's something that has to do with the power for the bridge, but I went ahead and modeled that out of some brass wire. I think it looks really good. There's 5 wires. There's 2 each on the outside, and they're attached to they're a little bit higher. There's also one in the center. And then on some of the wires on the center one and the one closest to the camera, I did like wind a smaller wire around that. Again, just based off prototype pictures to see what I thought looked good. And I think it looks really good. And these are 3D printed. If I didn't already say that, I might have. but these little braces here are 3D printed, and they look great. It's all based off prototype photos. I also added some extra gears and pulleys down here. Again, this is a little bit of freelance, but it, as I've said like 50 times in the last 30 seconds, it is based off of the prototype. The prototype, actually a couple prototype lift bridges. One of them is the Lorraine bridge, obviously, but it's also more closely based off of the old, well, it's now abandoned, it's a nickel plate lift bridge. It's on the old Wheeling and Lake Erie line. And a lot of the detail that I found, it's very similar to the bridges at Lorraine and this lift bridge, the model that I have here. But a lot of the detail that I did, that I could look at pictures off of that bridge, is what inspired me on this bridge. So it's kind of based off of that. But you see I added some pulleys here, as well as a platform with some 3D printed I-beams that hold it up. And then I have some pulleys going down that run into this box here. In real life, this is like a control house, motor house, I don't know, but it's something like that. You can see here, mine is just, it's a 3D printed walls, and I added the roof and the floor. But it's just a box right now. I would eventually like to add some windows and doors, and I also want to add a walkway going in between, like going down the center of the main span here for the prototype. I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, but all that will come eventually, hopefully, as well as a weathering job. I also want to weather the bridge too, but that'll come eventually. I just haven't really had a chance to do it yet, because this was really meant to be just kind of a side project while I waited for the sculpt mold to dry. Now that it's dried and I painted it, I want to get back more into doing more like whole layout stuff, but this is definitely a good side project. I think it looks really, really good. When I was in Cleveland a few months ago, I thought the lift bridges were just really neat. When I was in Lorraine a few weeks ago, I also spent a lot of time around that bridge, getting some research photos and just checking it out and exploring. I did a video on that. But I think the bridge now really, it took away the Lionel accessory feel of it and kind of gives it that really gritty industrial feel that I was going for with this bridge. So I am extremely happy with how it looks. You know, I just think the trains look cool going across it. It's just nice to look at. Even when you come into the layout room, I think having these bracing on top makes the bridge look a lot more like commanding than it did before. And overall, I think it looks awesome. So next thing for this, like I said, I want to add a few more details and definitely want to weather it. So we'll get around to that next. You know, aside from that, really not too much has changed. I think I said before, I did make a little foundation for the BM tower made out of some styrene. I have not painted it yet. You can see this area still needs painted. I haven't painted this back corner as well as over here, but I think it looks really nice. It looks a lot better. In the tower, it stands nice and straight, which looks good, and it's more at track level. I got the Brockton, the overpass here. Then over in Brockton, which is kind of like a staging area, don't mind some of this stuff, but over here I have this little like telegraph house thing. It's an MTH Rail King building. I paid like what, $13 for it or something at my local hobby store, and this is all based off prototype pictures. I have a photo of a train coming out of Brockton here. You can see in the corner there's a little like telegraph house, radio house, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but there's one of those right here. And so when you look at it from like this angle, it's almost dead on to how the picture looks on the model. So I think it looks really nice. I do want to paint it, get it more into accurate nickel plate colors, but right now, you know, it's a good stand-in. And the last thing I want to talk about before I end the video here is I did trace out some roads. This is at Brockton. This is going to be Central Avenue. So it's just going to go across the tracks like that. But the more exciting area is going to be over here in Lorraine. And don't mind some of the stuff around it, but I did lay out how I want to lay out a little bit of Lorraine. After visiting Lorraine in person a few weeks ago, I have a better grip on what the area actually looks like and how the town is laid out. So here I have Broadway Avenue, which is going to be, it'll be a crossing right about here. The station will be here. And the station at Lorraine is pretty unique, and there's really no kits or commercially available products that are like a stand-in for the Lorraine station. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. It's a unique shape, a unique design. So if you know someone or you yourself do custom buildings, let me know. Leave a comment or something, and we can be in touch for getting a custom, a custom station made, maybe. But over here, then I have an intersection here with Broadway Avenue and Route 6, which will go west along Lake Erie here. You can kind of see it's a little bit painted over, but it's going to come down here and then cross the tracks and go off the layout. And then over here, I have some buildings I want to put in. I think I'm going to do for this is something similar to how I did the BM Tower with a foundation. I'll throw in some styrene over here. to make it like a nice flat base, and then I might get some small wooden scenics or MTH buildings, maybe one or two, either one larger building or two like narrow ones. See if I can fit in something here to fit in some buildings, because I want to make Lorraine look like an actual town. Brockton, how it looks now, is pretty much how it's going to look, as far as the buildings and the scenery go. As far as the buildings go, there's really not too much in the modeled area of Brockton. Lorraine is a pretty decent sized town, and granted, I don't have a ton of room to model it in its full state, but I want to at least convey that it's a town of some kind of size. So that's why here I want to have at least some like storefront looking buildings, have a nice station. And then over here, I want to model the Lorraine Lumber Company, which, at least in some old photos and videos that I can find, was right next to the railroad tracks. You can see, so you can kind of see the tops of the buildings and the billboards and such for that. So I'd like to have the Lorraine Lumber Company modeled in some capacity in this corner. And then over here, I think it's gonna be a grass field per prototype photos. I don't want to go too crazy with it. I want to keep it still somewhat close to the prototype. But that is about it for this layout update. Don't have too much to share at the moment, and the layout doesn't look all that different from it did last time, but I have been doing a lot of work on it. I think the bridge was worthy enough on its own thing, as well as all the terrain and the paint. You know, having the terrain done is definitely really, really nice, and you know, it opens up possibilities for moving on to some other stuff, because I feel like I've been doing terrain since, like, you know, I built the layout in November, so I can finally move on with that. But speaking of moving on, I think my next step after I finish the terrain and I paint everything is going to most likely be ground cover. And I'm doing a ballast all the track. I did do a test ballast earlier, you know, a few months ago. Test ballast piece of fast track. It looked really good, and I do want to tweak how I did that a little bit on the layout. But I think it's going to be, but just based on how long it took me to do that single piece, I have a feeling that the track weathering is going to be a very lengthy process, which is totally fine. You know, I want it to take my time and look good, but I think it's going to take up enough time on its own. I won't really have enough time or energy to do anything else while I'm ballasting the track. So that's my next plan for the layout. Will most likely be ground cover and then ballasting. And then from there, who knows? You know, I'm gonna do one thing at a time, and we'll just see what I'm feeling after that. But anyway, that's about it for this layout update. Thanks for watching. I might leave a few clips of trains running if I didn't put them in the beginning. I don't know, we'll see. I guess you'll find out. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.